Welcome to part 2 of the Unit 5 video lecture for EDSE 512. As a reminder, here in Unit 5, we won't have a discussion. Our focus will be on case study part 2, and that includes evaluation, eligibility, and consent. So you will be building upon the work that you did for case study part 1 in Unit 4, and this is an opportunity for you to work further on the evaluation component, practicing with the student that you've selected. So this addition to the video lecture will focus solely on the case study part 2, expectations. So you'll see the description here. Obviously in part 1, you were initiating the evaluation process. You had chosen a student. And part 2 will provide you with the results of that evaluation from the multidisciplinary team. So again, this is a case study. It's not going to give you every single thing that you hoped for. And that can be difficult and frustrating, but it's a good opportunity for us to practice flexible thinking and work around that. From here, we'll get going with the evaluation component. So part 2 will provide you with several different documents, and you'll see your steps here, steps 1, 2, and 3. So what's given here for either student, Erasto or Misha, will be the results of the evaluation. So I'll just pull up Erasto. And it gives you a narrative summary here. And then down below would be all the information that you get from the testing. So the scores for the various assessments, you've got different components, academic here, and then a full summary of the evaluation results down below here at the bottom, along with recommendations from the special education teacher in this case study. And the same will be given to you for Misha. So you'll be going through that evaluation report, and then you will need to find the evaluation form on the Colorado Department of Education website, and you'll be putting the data from this PDF document here into the evaluation form. You do need to add everything, all of the evaluation results from your case study form attachment here. You'll need to put all of it into the evaluation report form that you get from CDE. You can see the tip here. You can copy and paste this. If you'd like to write some of it up in your own words in addition to that for summary, that can be a really good practice opportunity, but you will be graded upon the fact that you have included all of the evaluation results from the PDF directly into the evaluation form on the CDE website. And remember, if you go in modules, scroll up above Unit 5, you can go to Critical Document. Colorado Forms is a good tab that you can use there. And you can launch that website here by just clicking that little arrow. And then as we scroll down, we'll see everything that we need, everything that we're looking for. So in English, I could click on Evaluation Report. And this will give me a great opportunity to work through this form. So as you'll notice, you're listing here every single assessment that was utilized and the professional who did it. All of that will be found within the PDF for the student that you've selected in the dates. And then down below here, documenting the information. That will be all of the scores, and you're going to take that information directly from the PDF. So don't feel bad about doing that. It's actually what you're being asked to do right here under tip here in italics. Then you'll be going to the eligibility page, and you'll want to fill this out for the disability category for the student that you have selected. So let's say that we're going into Erasto's information here. Up at the top of this document, you will find the recommendation. So you'll see the SLD eligibility form should be done for Erasto. And you'll see again in italics here, tip, this is eligibility for specific learning disability. So back to the CDE IEP forms website, and down we go to the eligibility criteria or these categories. I'm going to click on specific learning disability. Again, this is just for example for what's recommended for Erasto in the case study. And this is our SLD form. We talked through this a little bit in the previous video lecture, but we're going to go through it in a little more detail here. So each of these forms would be completed in a way similar to what we're about to do. It's just dependent upon the disability that you're looking at. But if you're looking through SLD eligibility, the first question here, obviously we just have to read through. Some of these can be a little wordy, and so just make sure that you're looking carefully at what it's asking. So first, we have to say that the evaluation is sufficiently comprehensive and that we've identified all needs. Your answer here will be yes. If in the field your answer here is ever no, that's bad. That puts us into a problem where we would have to go back and evaluate further, and that could be pretty complicated with the timelines and with our compliance. And so it's best to just always be able to say yes here. Like I said in the previous video, obtaining consent really to evaluate in any area that even could remotely be a concern. Like I said, professionals, for instance, speech language pathologist or an OT could run a screener, and if they're not identifying any further concern, they don't have to go into a great deal of additional formal assessment. But it's good to just look at all aspects, especially if this is an initial and if you don't know the student well. So you want to say yes to the first one. And then at number 2, we are having to check yes or no that the child can receive reasonable educational benefit from gen ed alone. So obviously, for a student to be eligible for an IEP, we would have to say no to this. So we would want to say yes for number 1, no for number 2. If we were to say yes for number 2, then that would mean that we're not eligible for IEP and we're just going to move along with general education and with whatever we've had in place previously. So for this, we would want to say no to that. And then number 3, the child's performance. There are 3 different areas that we're looking at. We're just trying to eliminate these outliers, these factors. So due to a lack of appropriate instruction in reading, for example, we have to say that the performance problems or the struggles are or are not due to lack of teaching. So if the child has experienced homelessness and has been transient and spent a couple months in school each grade and then has moved state to state and has not been taught, that might be something we really need to consider. But in this case, of course, as we're trying to say yes for eligibility with these case studies, we will say the child's performance is not due to lack of appropriate instruction. By the way, to check these boxes, you should be able to just double click here in Microsoft Word. Default value, you can click checked. And then there you'll see that X has gone through it. If you're having trouble with that, what you can do is just delete the box itself. And then capitalize an X. And that will work too, but it should be pretty easy to just double click on it. So that's just a little formatting tip. So we're saying it's not due to lack of appropriate instruction. Is or is not due to lack of appropriate instruction in math. So again, looking at both reading and math. So we'd want to say is not. And then is not due to limited English proficiency. So obviously we have to say is not to all 3 of these in order to move forward with eligibility. And we've talked a little bit in this course already about misidentification or over-identification for students who are maybe learning English in the school setting for the first time. So it's very important to weed that out and make sure that we've examined those variables separately. But in these situations, we do want to move forward with eligibility. So for the case study, we're saying is not, is not, is not. Then we would go through and check those that are appropriate based upon the evaluation results. So I will leave this to you. You want to go through what is given to you in this PDF document and really look clearly at which areas of concern we're seeing. So we've got the language component, obviously the academic assessment. It's very important for us to look through. We've got scoring for reading here. And so we'll see very, very low in these areas. There is a fluency subtest or score category, and that's a big area of concern, as well as several others. Retail, so we could be looking at the comprehension component. That's just an example here as we're looking at ERASTA. We're seeing major reading concerns. So when we're going through the form, checking those boxes, we'll want to check the areas that would be correct for his eligibility. So for example, based on what we just saw in fluency, we could already say that would be one of those areas. So you'll go through all of those and cross-check with the PDF evaluation document given to you. And then we have to decide that the evaluation contains the body of evidence, identifying everything. Yes, we'll need to say that, again, just as we talked about above, is comprehensive. that there is observation in the learning environment and looking at behavior. Yes, that we have addressed instructional strategies. So what have we done, for instance, what has worked or not worked, all of the data. Obviously, this is all based on data. And then the educationally relevant medical findings either exist and are described or they do not exist. So in your case study, as you're looking, if you see a mention of medication, for instance, or a medical diagnosis, you would say that they do exist and are described. But if you don't see anything about a medical component in your case study, you would click do not exist. And then the documentation that the parents have been notified. So obviously all of this does have to go to the parents. And for the case study, we'll click and say yes, because we are assuming that we have done the best practices here. So that would be the appropriate response for these. And then obviously, if we're deciding that SLD is the primary disability, we need to click through for or not for all of these other ones. And this would be comparing to other disability categories, as well as things like cultural factors or environment. We need to rule those out, basically. So we would have to say are not. And then if we have checked are not to all of those, we would have to say that the team agrees. You'll list out the team members here. So those who were responsible for the evaluation, anybody mentioned in that evaluation document, you'll want to list along with their roles. And then you'll want to check that they each agree. So if you have a team member that doesn't agree, that would obviously be cause for concern, and you would have to discuss that further. We would say that the copy has been provided, yes, and then dissenting opinion attached if anybody disagrees, again. So that would be an issue that we're not luckily running into in the case study. But there are lots of complex team factors in regular life, so we just have to work through each of those as we encounter them and really have those collaborative conversations. So back here at the assignment description again, we've got the critical documents and the Colorado forms, and we're back to case study part 2. So we've talked through the evaluation report in the eligibility page. You will be going through each of these, and then you are requesting parent or guardian permission for the initial provision of special education services. Again, this we will go through in this CDE website. And I've got consent for initial provision of services provided here in English. So I'm going to open that. This one is very important. So let's talk through it step by step. But I do want to mention before we wrap this one up, those are the 3 documents required. So this is what we're looking for in the advanced criteria to earn full credit. That's all you have to do for case study part 2. Okay. So now I'm going back to that document because this one is really important. I just have to say, whatever detail you can include, you should include. Okay, so again, down below we see the option in this form for other factors. Always consider something. We don't want to see NA, we don't want to see blank spots on these forms. It's really, really beautiful to provide thorough and comprehensive documentation and to go above and beyond in the body of evidence that you're providing in every single form that is an IEP document. So really avoid skimping on these. I know that some of the questions can seem a little redundant, but it is better to be redundant than to not give sufficient information. So when you're filling that out, we just want to do all of these blanks. So we've got the parent or guardian names in the case study documents. The team has found child name eligible. And then we're listing why is the provision recommended. So this will be really founded in the results of that comprehensive evaluation, and you'll want details regarding the areas of difficulty or the areas of eligibility within SLD that have been identified, and based on the following evaluation procedures, test records, and reports. So that's even more detail regarding the specific scoring or the specific assessments that were used. So these are the areas of weakness that have been identified by the multidisciplinary team, and the other service options considered and the reasons rejected. This could go along with the RTI or the MTSS efforts that have been made, small group or one-on-one interventions. This could go with any kind of differentiation, universal design for learning techniques that have been attempted that have not been affected, and any other factors. This would be a good spot to insert information regarding medical component or medication if this was taken into consideration in the case study document. Any concerns of the family are also good to list under other factors. But again, we do want to fill that out. and then returning the form to yourself, or you can put Jane Carpenter. She's a case study teacher if you prefer that. And then this would be where the parent would check, I give my consent, or I refuse, but we hope that with such a strong evaluation, they would give the consent. So those are the 3 components of this assignment. Thank you for doing them in detail and really setting aside that time. It's great practice.